Hello, hello. Welcome to our webinar. We're going to wait a little bit more, maybe one more minute until more people join. Maybe in the meantime, we can share where we are joining from. So I'm joining today from Lisbon, Portugal. So hello from sunny Portugal. Let us know where you are joining from in the chat. Conor, where are you now?
I'm in New York, so if you hear any sirens or people yelling outside, it's all part of the allure.
Yeah, like usually our audiences are like from different countries. I also see right now that people joining from Bahrain, Colombia, France, Romania, Switzerland, Brazil. That's awesome. It's nice to see. To start, maybe, my name is Margaret. I'm a part of the growth team here at Metabase. And today with me is Conor Dewey. Conor is our product manager at Metabase. And Conor will be talking today about how we track product metrics in Metabase. Before we jump into the webinar, first of all, it's going to be recorded, and we're going to send the recording afterwards to everyone who visited. Also, we're gonna host it in kind of next structure. So I think we're gonna have the presentation for about half an hour. And then after that, we're gonna host a Q&A session for like 10-15 minutes. So if you have any questions to Conor, leave them in the questions tab in the bottom right corner of your screen. We'll pick them up, we'll read them after the presentation and also answer all of the questions. And also, you may find a polls tab also in the bottom right corner of your screen. If you can, please answer those so we can better understand who is the audience. And feel free to share anything you think about the topic and the insights today in the chat. So with that, Conor, I'm giving the word to you, and yeah, let's start.
All right, how's it going, everyone? We'll be talking about product metrics in Metabase. So let's get into it. As for the agenda today, we'll talk a little bit about our approach to KPIs in Metabase, how we think about metrics from the product team's perspective, the key questions that we aim to answer with these metrics, and the metrics that answer them. And then we'll get into an example in Metabase, and I'll show you how we construct one of our dashboards that actually tracks some of these metrics. And lastly, we'll wrap things up by bringing it all back to customer research, the juicy stuff, actually understanding how people use your product. So our approach to KPIs at Metabase, if you aren't familiar with Metabase, welcome. Metabase is a simple yet powerful analytics tool, makes it easy for everyone to dig into data on their own. And our approach to KPIs metrics at Metabase is along the lines of Goodhart's law, which is this quote here: when a measure becomes a target, it ceases to be a good measure. And our target on the product team is to build a product people love. And this isn't perfectly quantifiable, but we do have a series of qualitative and quantitative signals, metrics that help us understand how we're doing against this goal, which is what we'll talk about today. So these are the core questions that I'm thinking about on a daily basis as a product manager that I'm trying to answer with metrics at Metabase. And there's plenty more kind of business health questions that we could talk about here, like how many users, how much money are we making? But for the sake of this talk, I'll focus on these questions here, since ultimately these are what results in moving those other metrics, like how many people are using your product, how much money are we making, that sort of thing. So the three questions: first, how satisfied are people using our product? What does the journey look like to being satisfied? And what's stopping people from being satisfied today? And that's a lot of satisfied. I'm using that word here on purpose because that's ultimately a proxy for paying customers. And paying customers is the effect. The cause is getting someone in the door, having them try out our product, and hopefully loving it. So that's what we're focused on impacting. Those are the questions that we want to answer to figure out how we're doing against those goals and what action we can take to better achieve those goals. So the product metrics that aim to answer these, there's a lot of different ways to answer these metrics. And as your data team, as your product gets more mature, you'll explore different ways to answer them. But I'll talk a little bit about the three that I lean on very frequently at Metabase. So as far as how satisfied people are using our product, retention is the most surefire way that I lean on to tell if people are sticking around, then they're probably satisfied. This can be done a number of ways. There's actually a prior webinar that's solely on retention, so I'll link to that in the slides and we can share that out if you're interested in digging deeper in how to do cohort analysis and whatnot. But even starting out, if you're tracking 6-12 week retention rates, then you're getting off to a good start in terms of understanding how satisfied people are if they're sticking around. Number two, what does the journey look like to being satisfied? For us, for Metabase, we have a trial. So we have a 2-week trial period. And for this, it's really about understanding how many people are coming in the door and having success early on, enough to actually activate and pay us money. So this is imperative to making product decisions, knowing how people are early in the journey and how they're getting their footing. And lastly, what's stopping people from being satisfied? So Net Promoter Score can also work for number one. This is what I'll talk about next, a little bit of foreshadowing. But when it comes to understanding where you're falling short, qualitative feedback is going to be king. So this is mostly a quantitative talk, but I want to emphasize the qualitative aspect. And if you aren't familiar with Net Promoter Score, this is normally a touch point with customers where they rate how likely they are to recommend your product to a friend, and they hopefully are also providing feedback to contextualize their score. So if you want to drop in the chat, if you have other metrics, other things that you use to answer these questions, I'm curious to hear them because there are plenty, but these are the three that I lean on most heavily at Metabase. And we'll get into Net Promoter Score. This is the example that I lean on a daily basis. So let's talk about how to actually create pretty much the same dashboard that we use at Metabase and how we use it. And for a little bit more context on NPS, you can see over here is actually our survey that we send out to customers 4 weeks after they start the product on a recurring basis. This goes out to open source customers, it goes out to our cloud customers as well. And if you're an admin, you might have seen this email where it links to a survey. Input your email, you say how likely it is you would recommend Metabase to a friend or colleague. And then you can see here, there's also room for you to contextualize your answer. What are the main reasons for your rating? And what are your goals with Metabase? And there's some more stuff there as well. So let's actually start to build out this NPS dashboard and Metabase like we do it. So I'm using this sample data set, so we're not giving away any names or data, but you can see here we have an ID field we have created at. This is when the survey was submitted. We have NPS, so this is going to be a score from 1 to 10. And then there's a comments field here. And I think these are actually whiskey reviews, so it's not going to be particularly applicable, but I wanted to emphasize that the qualitative aspect of this is where a lot of the juicy stuff comes from. And I think it's worth talking a little bit about how this data gets here. So for the sake of this demo, this is a CSV that was in Sheets, and I just used the nifty new CSV upload feature in Metabase to pipe this in. And If you're just starting out tracking product metrics, then this is a great place to start. You can just have your survey results piped into Google Sheets using whatever tool you want to use for surveys. There's a million of them. And then you can upload those CSVs into Metabase and start doing analysis right away. And as you mature, you'll want the data to be more up to date, to be constantly refreshed. In Metabase, you don't want to have to keep uploading stuff. Then what we do is we have an ETL pipeline that pipes the survey results into our data warehouse. And if, depending on your data format, there's probably a modeling layer there. We use Metabase models to alter the data and get it to a format that's easily digestible. So you can see here, this is a model shown by the little cube guy up there. And you can go in and model it as you would like. You can hide columns, show columns, so that it's most digestible for users. And yeah, so let's get into actually building some stuff here in Metabase. So the first thing we'll look at is, how do people actually read these responses and act on them? So for this, we're just going to use a table list view, but we want to make sure this is sorted by created at, so that the most recent results are at the top. And then we're going to go in and apply some conditional formatting. So let's say if the NPS is greater than 8, we're going to turn that green and highlight the whole row. If the NPS is, say, less than 7, we are going to turn that red. These are people that didn't have as good of a time in the product. And just to cap this off, if NPS is equal to 7, let's turn this yellow. And we'll do the same thing for NPS is equal to 8. So now you can see this is starting to get a little bit more easily digestible. We have the most recent results popping up at the top, and you can see quickly at a glance which are more positive, which are kind of neutral, and which are a little more negative. And these are the same thresholds we use here at Metabase, and this is pretty much the same view that I'm looking at on a daily basis. So we'll go ahead and save this. New NPS responses number 3. And we'll worry about dashboards later. So now you can see all the results coming in, but this doesn't really give us a way to track this metric over time, right? And see how we're improving and how we're doing in the product. So for that, we'll need to do something more along the lines of a time series graph. We can go into our question and modify it. Let's go ahead and make sure NPS is not empty. And let's summarize this data. So let's say if NPS is greater than 8, we're going to call this segment promoters. If NPS is less than 7, we're going to call these detractors. And if NPS is equal to 7 or NPS is equal to 8, we're going to call these passives. We're going to go ahead and group this by month. You can go a kind of more fine interval if you have the volume for it. Normally, I find that monthly is the most reliable interval to calculate NPS at. So you can see we'll visualize this, can go in and make this a bar chart. And let's stack these bars. And just like that, you see we start to get to something really interesting here. So you can see the percentage of users that are promoters in this definition. It's kind of been fairly high. Normally 60-70% is pretty darn good. If you can get higher than that, then awesome. And it's dipped off a little bit recently. So you have to wonder if we did something wrong, or we might want to reach out to these people that are in the yellow or red segment to kind of determine why maybe our NPS has dipped recently. So let's go ahead and save this as a new question. I'm going to call this NPS breakdown number 3. Now we're getting something useful over time, but this might not be super digestible for one of our colleagues on, let's say, the marketing team or the success team to come in, and they might not know exactly what this means. Like, is this good? Is this bad? It's not super clear, like, what the trend is over time. So you can actually make this even more digestible with trend and goal visualizations in Metabase. So if we want to do that, let's focus in on the percentage of promoters. So let's look at the percentage of promoters. Let's do this by month once again. And we'll go in here and we'll make this let's say a trend chart. And we have 3, but now we're counting raw numbers. So we have to make sure this is a percentage. So I'm going to go in here and add over count. And let's see if that gets us something a little bit more useful. Okay, so we're looking at 60% promoters in this most recent interval versus only 48 last month. Though this isn't formatted very nicely. So let's go ahead and fix that. And this is looking pretty good. So now someone can tell at a glance what the percentage of promoters are in the last interval and what the change was from the last month. So we'll call this promoters trend. And you can do a similar thing with the gauge visualization Metabase as well, which is something we lean on. So you can actually see what's good and what's bad. Now, if we go here, let's see what my data looks like. Okay, and I'm going to kill that. And we're going to filter for the last 12 months, just for the sake of my data set. What we do is we look at the last month. Okay, so we have a gauge here that's telling us kind of what's good, what's not so good, and what's bad. But we want to set these thresholds. So let's go ahead and say anything from 0 to 50% is not so good. 50% to 70% is okay. Not so good. Okay. 0.7 to 1. I'm going to call this woohoo. And now we have a nice looking gauge chart. So we can go ahead and save that as NPS gauge. And we're really getting somewhere here. Now let's go pop all this on a dashboard and create something that we can actually hand off to stakeholders that we can monitor every day. So we're going to create a dashboard, call this Net Promoter Score. And we're going to add some of these questions in here. So we're going to go ahead and add the new responses, the breakdown, gauge, and our trend chart that we created. And we can move these around. Let's put the kind of easy to understand stuff at the top, just so people can see at a glance what this looks like. Maybe the breakdown goes right under it. and the new responses at the bottom. So now we're getting somewhere, and let's add a little heading here just to contextualize what we're actually showing our stakeholders. How satisfied are people using our product? Let's add a little thinking face. All right, so let's save that, and we can see at a glance how we're doing over time, how we're doing against our goals. And you can see all of the latest responses piped in right here. Now, maybe the most useful thing that we use this for in Metabase, and what I am looking at on a daily basis, has to do with this question that brings in new responses. So there's actually a nifty little tool in Metabase to set up an alert on your question. And this can be an email that's sent to you on a daily basis, or if you have Slack enabled in your instance, then you can pipe these new responses daily into a Slack channel, which is actually exactly what we do at Metabase. So we have the same question with an alert set up to send to a dedicated Slack channel. And that's useful if you have a team of multiple product managers. So we have 4 product managers at Metabase, and we can all go in, look at the new responses, and reply to them, to claim them and respond to those emails. And it's not only the 6s that you want to respond to and reach out. Obviously, those are people that weren't really satisfied, and you want to find out why and dig deeper into that. But even say a 9, where the comment is, "This is freaking awesome," normally we'll respond to them as well and say, "Thank you for your feedback. You gave us 9 out of 10. That's awesome. What could we do to take you from a 9 to a 10? So that's where a lot of the kind of juicy, interesting feedback is. And that's where you can really start to understand where you're falling short as a product team and what you want to act on. So there, I'll go ahead and head back to the slides. And it's a nice segue into the role of customer research. So my view is that quantitative data will only get you so far in understanding your product and how it's performing in the wild. It can be an extremely useful tool, but at the end of the day, it is a tool. So we use the signals that we have as jumping off points and then talk to customers to learn more and really dig deeper. A lot of the work here is creating surface area for feedback. So for us at Metabase, that's GitHub, that's support tickets, that's social media, and then we have touch points that we created ourselves. So these kind of survey emails that go out for NPS. If someone churned, we'll ask why, and that'll all also get piped into Metabase. And when you have it in one place, when you have all of that data in one place, you can join back on, say, customer information to see how different plans are kind of tracking in these different metrics, and you can join on other useful information as well. And once you have these surface areas, it's really about creating a weekly ritual. So that's where the Slack alerts come into play, where you have a team and you kind of on a regular basis, you'll ask why, you'll follow up with these people, and you can really start to understand how your product is performing. And that's the talk. Like I mentioned earlier, if you're interested in retention analysis specifically, we have a webinar dedicated strictly to that. And I also linked to some other community posts at Metabase that are related. The second one around measuring success of new product features. It's also an interesting point, something we do at Metabase, but we didn't get to talk about a lot today. So I would recommend reading and checking these out. And that's it. I'll hand it off to Margaret.
Yeah, thank you, Conor. That was great. I will send the presentation to everyone after the event too, so you can also click through the links and also see the slides. I'm also sending right now in the main chat the link to the webinar recording. We covered how to build retention graph separately separately. So you can just read the summary, or you can watch the recording where one of our speakers also goes through like each step of how to do that in Metabase. And we'll now jump to the questions. So if you have any questions, leave them in the questions tab or in the chat. I will start. I saw the question that Jonathan posted in the middle of your talk, Conor, about the warehouse we're using to store the data. Can you maybe elaborate on that a little bit?
Yes, yeah. We use Redshift at Metabase, so we have an ETL vendor that pipes that into Redshift. Like I said, we also do a modeling layer on top of that using Metabase models, because the survey data isn't nicely formatted or easily digestible right off the bat. So we have our data team model that, and then it gets placed in Metabase in a model, so everyone can kind of see this as a building block and easily access it.
Thank you. And then David asks a question about the alerts. Let me know if you know the answer. So alerts seem to have recently been sent to people individually. Can we revert back to where the alert was sent to everyone as a group? Also, is there a way to use Google email groups rather than type in all emails individually? Maybe you know the answer.
As for the first question around alerts being sent to a group, that's something we're looking at now. So hopefully we'll have a fix for you there soon. As far as Google email groups, I'm less familiar. I would imagine it would work similarly, but I can't fully speak to that.
We can check and get back to you on that, or well, yeah, I think so. I think we can check and get back to you on that. Mohammed asks, in the NPS dashboard, how did you put the face emoji on top of the page?
I used a Mac shortcut. But emojis, Markdown, even images and GIFs, Metabase just renders Markdown. So anything you can type into a text editor, you should be able to put into Metabase in those Markdown and heading fields.
So yeah, you just need to pick the text, I think text card, right? And just you're able to customize the dashboard in many different ways and add in media too. Okay, so Diego asks, do you have suggestions on when to send NPS surveys to users after they have reached certain time? After they have reached certain time goal in your product?
Yeah, so we send it 4 weeks after someone signs up or activates in Metabase. I think this is a good interval because you don't want to send it too soon before someone has a chance to really develop an experience with your product and they'll have the most interesting feedback for you. I would bias against using goals, since that might bias your responses towards people that actually had some level of success. Some of our most interesting conversations are with people that signed up for Metabase. They might have done a couple things, but they've been kind of in a paralysis state for 4 weeks, and then we can talk to them around why they're kind of in this paralysis state and what's stopping them from having that success. So I would bias towards time, and the time will really depend on your product and the frequency of usage. The people that are using Metabase often are using it on a weekly or daily basis. So 4 weeks is enough time for us to have them develop a good experience, or develop an experience with the product and have feedback for us. But that might differ depending on the frequency of usage for your product.
Okay, and then do you have any recommendations for balancing DBT models and Metabase models? I'm afraid of splitting my transformation logic too much.
Good question. It really depends on your org and the sophistication that you're at. So if you have a full data team that's working with these models and you need something Git-based, then DBT is going to be a better solution for you. If it's something that you want to throw together on the fly, or something that's a little bit more simple. If you want end users to be able to see the logic and edit it and have access to it, then Metabase is probably a better bet than doing something kind of further upstream. So I think it depends on the sophistication of the model and how accessible you want it to be.
Meryl asks, do you have any suggestions for simple SQL Cod or any solution to count only the weekdays for, I think, turnaround times?
Good question. We have some date functions in our custom expression editor that could help you get there with the Metabase query builder. So you can easily parse out kind of what day of the week something is, and you can probably use that to get to the end goal that you're looking for. As for SQL, my days as a data scientist were long ago, so I can't pull together the query off the top of my head.
And then Isa asks, regarding the CSV files, can we update the same module each time?
Good question. So it's something we're working on right now, actually. So today you'll have to either refresh the CSV itself, update that, and then re-upload, or you'll have to work with multiple models in Metabase for different date ranges. It's not perfect, but it's something that's being worked on as we speak. So soon you'll be able to append onto the same model and kind of keep the source of truth building over time and reuse that.
And for the CSV upload feature, which just appeared in Metabase 47, I just wanted to mention that we're going to have a webinar next week related specifically to 47 update. So we're going to go through the, what's new in Metabase this time. So if you're interested, you're welcome to join. Yeah, I see one more question here in the questions tab. Do you have suggestions for aligning product teams around a few selected metrics, like workshops or other ways to help product managers understand and operationalize it?
Yes. So one thing you see, especially at kind of earlier companies, we've gone through this at Metabase, can be the proliferation of different metrics, different kind of variants of the same thing. So a lot of that's around messaging and saying these are the 3-4 things we care about and being really adamant about that. As far as practical tips in Metabase, we have official collections and official questions on Enterprise and Pro. So you can denote that this is like a verified artifact that represents the source of truth. And these are the 4 questions on this dashboard. And you can kind of start to build that muscle memory that way. We also added in 47 the ability to set the dashboard as the homepage in Metabase. So one great way to do this to kind of build that muscle memory and center people around a few metrics is setting a dashboard as your home screen in Metabase. So every time all of your end users log into it, all of the different product managers log into it, they'll see these 4 metrics right in their face, and they'll keep track of them over time. They'll understand that this is the stuff that we're focused on moving right now. So those are the practical ways that I would enforce that. But I think workshops are also great, great for reinforcing that.
Thanks, Conor. And then Simon asks, it's a quite specific question, so let me know if you can answer that. If not, I can suggest something. So how can you rename columns with the same name when you join the same table multiple times? When I change one, all with the same name change, is there a workaround? Maybe you encountered it, Conor.
I'm not sure off the top of my head. I'll have to talk to Success, see if they've encountered this.
Yeah, Simon, if you can always reach us at help@metabase.com. Maybe they will have an answer to this because they are working more closely with this kind of things. Perfect. Okay, I'm gonna check if I missed any question. Is there a possibility to obtain certificate from Metabase? I'm not really pure what you mean. If you can provide a little bit more details, please. And also Joshua is typing. Okay, so when editing a SQL query, I get this error sometimes. When nothing changes with this ID reference, it cannot read properties of undefined reading ID. I don't know, Conor, if you can also provide some details there.
Yeah, I'm not sure. I don't.
If not,
I guess I don't have my debugging hat on this morning.
Yeah, if you have any, more like specific questions, feel free to reach to this email and see if they can help you. And then a question from David, a bit unrelated, but can I add a regression line to a scatter plot?
You can add a trend line today or a goal line, but we don't currently support natively like a line of best fit in Metabase, though it is something we're looking into in the medium term.
Okay, and Isa, about the certified Metabase master, I will recommend you to check our Metabase Expert program. I'll send a link right here in the chat. You can take a look and apply if you're interested, and we can take it from there. And I also see one more question from Meryl in the questions tab. I just started with a startup company, so our Metabase is pretty empty now. I would like to check if we improved or have plans in being specific on pointing out errors in SQL. Yeah, Meryl, I don't know if I got the question. If you can maybe elaborate a little bit on that. Okay, any last questions or questions? I don't know if it's a question for Conor, but how does Cube and Metabase go hand in hand? Conor, let me know if it's not a question for you, and I will also recommend to reach to help.
I'm not super familiar with Cube. My naive understanding is that it's along the lines of modeling. So if you do model your data, then you should be able to use it better in Metabase. That's my understanding, but I'm sure other people would have a better explanation.
Okay, I think we can wrap it up. Thank you very much for joining us today, and Conor, thank you for doing a demo and explaining us how you track things in the product team. Again, we'll send the recording to everyone here and also the slides. So look out for an email from me. And yeah, we'll be happy to see you on our next events, and specifically next week on the 47 release event. So thank you again. Have a good day, and we'll see you soon.
Thanks, everyone. Hope it was helpful.
Bye-bye. Oops, sorry, didn't end it.